Welcome, everyone. I hope you're having a great time at the conference. And thanks for joining. It's great to see so many of you interested in design thinking and applying it in your organizations. First, why do we need design thinking? Very often in modern organizations, we're being asked or we are solving problems looking at building the best product, the best service, or the fastest process. And very often, we don't really look at the end user or the recipient of our process or our product. And just like in this quote, we look at building the best bridge without thinking about people who are going to cross it. And this is where design thinking comes into play. It helps us empathize with the end user, with our customer, employee, and helps us apply the principles of design in building things. That contrast between how organizations approach building new things and how design thinking approaches it is very well described in a video by Paul Bennett from Ideation. Ideation is one of the first companies who started applying design thinking in the corporate world. Paul Bennett is their creative director. I'm going to play the video for you.
We were asked by a large healthcare system in Minnesota to describe to them what their patient experience was. And I think they were expecting, they'd worked with lots of consultants before, I think they were expecting some kind of hideous org chart with thousands of bubbles and systemic this, that, and the other, and all kinds of mind-mappy stuff. Or even worse, some kind of ghastly death by PowerPoint thing with wow charts and all kinds of, God knows whatever. The first thing we actually shared with them was this. I'll play this until your eyeballs completely dissolve.
I don't know if you can see, but this is ceiling.
59
it's
seconds
a video of a ceiling.
into the film. This is a minute 59. 3 minutes 19. I think something happens. I think a head may appear in a second. 5 minutes 10. 5 minutes 58. 6 minutes 20. We showed them the whole cut, and they were all completely, what is this? And the point is, when you lie in a hospital bed all day, all you do is look at the roof, and it's a really shitty experience. And just putting yourself in the position of the patient, this is Christian, who works with us at Ideation, he just lay in the hospital bed and kind of stared at the polystyrene ceiling tiles for a really long time. That's what it's like to be a patient in the hospital. And they were sort of, blinding glimpse of bleeding obvious, oh my goodness. So looking at the situation from the point of view of the person out, as opposed to the traditional position of the organization in, was for these guys quite a revelation.
Staying on the healthcare topic, there is a great example of applying design thinking in the healthcare sector. A public hospital called TechHRSG'19 applied design thinking in rebuilding everything, starting from the structure of the building and how the building is designed to the service they're providing to their patients. The example in here is related to patients with dementia. What the problem they were trying to solve is when you have patients with dementia, very often they leave the room and they can't find their way back. Initially, what the hospital was doing, and what a lot of the hospitals are doing still, is restrained the patient to their bed, so they can't leave. TechHRSG'19 decided to just make it difficult for the patients to leave the room by painting the doors to look like bookshelves. And in that way, the patient couldn't find the door, and by the time they could, the nurse would be alerted and come to the room. So this not only changed the patient's experience, it also influenced the employees, the nurses' KPIs. So the nurses started being measured against how many less patients need to be restrained in their beds. Another example is trying to prevent patients from coming back with the same chronic diseases. And one of the things TechHRSG'19 did was to encourage healthy eating. It's more expensive to eat unhealthy than healthy at the hospital. That applies to the employees and to the patients. And the next example is of just the structure of the building. They wanted to create a healing environment for the patients. The hospital was designed like a garden, a hospital in a garden. The example here is from the rooftop. So the rooftop is really a garden. It provides for a healing environment for the patients and their families, and it also cools the building. Another example, I couldn't find the photo, is when you enter the elevators and you look up, they look like a forest. The ceiling looks like a forest. And they explained to me that most of the patients, that's how they enter the elevator. They look at the ceiling, like in that video. And if you're a patient on the bed, seeing a green floral pattern is so much better than just seeing some tiles. It's a great case study. If you have time, look up for a case study available online called The Little Hospital That Could. And if you're ever in TechHRSG'19, just enjoy the experience. Now, jumping into design thinking methodology, how do you apply it? Design thinking focuses really on 4 questions. What is, what if, what works, what wows, and what works. What is helps you look at the current reality and really develop empathy with your customers. It helps you jump into their shoes and see the world from their perspective. What if looks at all the opportunities you have. What wows helps you make some choices, and what works takes it into the market. The lines, the waves you see on the picture here show what designers call divergent and convergent thinking. At the beginning of your process, you collect a lot of data, a lot of information. Then you generate even more ideas to later converge on a couple of ideas you want to test, and even less that you want to take to the market. Let's start with the first step, what is? One of the most important things to remember is to try to solve the right problems. Probably very often you're faced with a request to fix a process or make something work better or design a product with these particular parameter. And in design thinking, the main problem, the main center of your focus should be the user. So the good example in here is the mobile phone industry. 12 years ago, everyone was trying to build a better, faster feature phone. Then Apple came in and just redefined the problem they were trying to solve. They were trying to provide to their customer an ecosystem of services and products that provide a seamless experience. And they revolutionized the market. Now it seems like most of the mobile phone companies are trying to build a better, faster smartphone with a better camera and a better storage. I think that the next wave, or the next wave of revolution will be in solving for flexibility. How do you provide the customer with flexibility to change features of your phone? So how many of you use every day your Bluetooth or full storage of your phone? And what if you could swap those features for other ones which you need at a particular point in time like a camera, a Lego block like camera which you can add to your phone. The example in here is from phone blocks. This isn't really a ready product yet, it's a concept, but phone blocks designed a phone where each feature, each component is like a Lego block. So if you're going for a holiday, you can take a better camera and a better storage space. If you're going for a run, you might want to swap this for your Bluetooth, which connects to your running device, and maybe a better battery. So let's watch the space. I think that might be the next problem to be solved. So remember about asking the right questions and solving for the right problems. Once we've done that, we really have to understand what the friction points are that we're trying to solve for. And this is where we really jump into the customer's shoes and understand what their life looks like, what their problems are, and how our product, our process, whatever we're trying to solve, fits into their life. There's a great example from Nicorette. A couple of years back, they were facing stagnating sales, stagnating profits, and what was even more horrifying to the management team was the product didn't seem to work. An average smoker would take up to 7 attempts to kick the habit. So they decided to apply design thinking to redesign the product. The team that was assembled started on the exploration journey. They looked at a number of different points in their customer's life, followed them from home to their work, interviewed the clients, observed them to really understand and, as we say, jump into their shoes and see world from the customer's perspective. This is one of the outcomes. They designed, this is a customer journey of a smoker customer of Nicorette that highlights a number of friction points. So points in time during your day when you really feel like having a smoke. And that exploration was very revealing to Nicorette's team. What they realized is that at the beginning, they thought that they're solving a medical problem. So I'm trying to help people quit a physical addiction to nicotine. What they realized is that their customers didn't see addiction to nicotine as a medical problem. They saw it as a lifestyle choice. And quitting it was a choice to try to get more control over your addiction. And they also realized that with that insight, they couldn't solve the quitting smoking problem with just a product. They realized they have to design the entire digital physical experience that would help the customer at different points of the day, at different points of their quitting journey. So maybe to wrap up the what is stage, the way you design, the way you develop that insight and build customer journeys is really by observing your customers, your end users, asking them questions, seeing how they do things, how they interact with your process or your product today, and interviewing them. And from that first step, you will accumulate a lot of data, and a lot of ideas will start popping up in your head. And this is where you want to start the ideation. There are 2 things I'd like you to remember before starting ideation. Very often in the modern organizations, we're faced with a number of constraints before you even start coming up with new ideas. So for example, your process cannot last longer than X number of days or seconds. Your product has to have these parameters, or it can't cost more than Y. And when you start with constraints rather than possibilities, your designs of the future will look exactly the same like the ones from today. So make sure you look at possibilities and push the constraints at the sides. The second thing to remember is in your what is stage, you will ask and you will talk to a lot of customers, and they often will tell you, this is what I want. This is how I think your product should work. It's a great insight, and try to have it at the back of your head, but don't treat everything that the customer says they want as the end and as your answer. And I really like this quote in here from Henry Ford. If he listened to their customers, to his customers, he would just try to train faster horses instead of revolutionizing how we build cars. So remember, not to take everything the customer says as an answer. Now, to ideation, how do we ideate? There is a number of different techniques. The one I particularly like is flipping orthodoxies. And what are orthodoxies? They're deeply ingrained beliefs about how things are. So we usually, as individuals or organizations, run on autopilot when it comes to orthodoxies, and we don't question them. And when you start questioning some of them, because not all orthodoxies are bad, but the ones that once you start challenging them, you might come up with some amazing ideas. So this is an example of an orthodoxy exercise for a retail bank. So as a customer, you first need to think about, as a customer, what are the couple things that you would never say about your bank? The first example is here is the customer would never say that, well, I'm positively surprised with the fees that the bank is charging me. The orthodoxy in here from the bank is that, well, I have to earn somewhere, so I need to charge the customer. There is an example of that orthodoxy flipped on its head in the US. Online trading platform Robinhood provides free trading services for their customers. The second example is, well, as a customer, I don't have to wait for my loan to be approved. It's done immediately. I wouldn't say it as a customer. The orthodoxy here is that the longer the process takes, the better decision we take as a bank. There is an example of a flipped orthodoxy. Already in Poland, mBank provides your decision on the loan in 30 seconds. And the last example, my favorite one, is a customer would never say that they love hanging out at the bank branch. And what it means is the branches are supposed to be efficient. You go there, get everything done, and off you go, next customer. If you're ever in Plaza Singapura, drop into the DBS branch there. It was redesigned, and it looks nothing like a bank branch. There is a DBS branded coffee shop. The entire space is just meant for people to go there and enjoy being there. There's a big table you can take your coffee to. You don't have to be a customer to spend your time at the branch. I saw some people just having their lunch there. It's a great flipped orthodoxy when you look at how you can design spaces for your customers. Once we conclude the ideation stage, you will have a lot of ideas that you can't, most likely, you won't be able to progress all at the same stage. And this is where some decisions need to be made. This is where what wows comes into play. The first step is you really want to test your assumptions. And you test assumptions in order to understand what needs to hold true for your opportunity to be viable for the business and great for the customer. And so there are 3 angles in here where you want to test assumptions. So for each opportunity you have in your long list, think about what needs to hold true for the company to produce it or implement it. What are the assumptions behind it? What needs to hold true for the customer or customer to buy it or employee to adopt it? And then what needs to hold true for the business case to make sense? The ideas you want to take forward are the ones that have assumptions that are viable in all 3 buckets. And that's your wow zone. So that helps you really narrow down on what will really make a good business case, the business will be able to implement it, and the customer will love it. Once you've done that, you narrow down into a couple of ideas. It's time to build prototypes. And by prototypes, I don't mean robust 3D prototypes that are already connected to your live systems. Prototype can be as simple as a drawing, a screen drawing, or a user story drawn on a flip chart, or a physical representation made with paper and scissors and colors, or a video. The idea is to have something that tells the story of what your idea will deliver to the customer, your end user, what's the value, how it works. And you take that rapid prototype and you test it with people whose opinion you value. So you take it internally into your organization and you take it to a couple of customers, end users, employees to really get their feedback. Collect their feedback. What's also important is not to get attached to your prototype. So once you collect your feedback, go back to your drawing board and incorporate it. Change your prototype and take it back again to your stakeholders, just to arrive at that, the one that when you feel the feedback, you've gotten enough feedback and you're comfortable with the quick prototype. Once you've done that, it's time to move to the what works stage. So we're already building something that will be ready to go to the market. So in your prototyping stage before, in the what wows stage, as you've gone through testing, some of the ideas will naturally die down because it would be you will realize showing it to the IT team or showing it to the customer that it might not work and it might provide less of a value than we initially thought. The ones that make it through the what wows stage are the ones that you want to start really prototyping into a working prototype. So something that is close to being a real product or a real process or service, whatever you're designing. While you're building a prototype, you also need to think about how will you measure the success. Because a prototype will have to be taken to your customers and tested, right? And you want to measure that test across 3 different criteria. The quantitative ones, so how many clients will buy it, how many employees say they will use it. Qualitative, what do they think about it? That will help you introduce more, refine your prototype. And cost-benefit analysis. So at what cost would you buy it? Test how long would it take for an employee to go through the process. That testing helps you not only to make the product or a service better, it helps you sell it internally in the organization. So when you go back to the steering committee and you say, hey, listen, I tested the prototype with 100 employees and they said 90% said, it's great, we're going to use it. It's so much more powerful than just saying, we've tested it, it's successful. Once you build the prototype, tested with the users, collected feedback, made it better, it's time to build a production-ready concept, already a product or a service, so something that's finished, but something that you don't want to yet launch to the market. You want to test it again with your end users, your customers. So build it, refine your measurement criteria, test it, measure, and you're ready to launch. So the main idea here is to build small, test, and collect feedback quickly. So when you arrive at that launch stage, you've already had a number of touch points with your customers, your employees, or the end users. To sum up, a couple of things I'd like you to remember after this session. Remember about the 4 questions. What is? Looks at the current reality. What if? Helps you look at all the opportunities you have. What wows? Helps you make choices. And what works? Helps you move those ideas into the market. Remember to challenge the problem you're trying to solve. Don't take it for granted when you're given a problem of, solve this process, make this process faster. Just make sure the problem always addresses the end user, your customer, your employee. Always make sure you spend time to empathize with your customer, your employee, to really be able to build things that are meant for them. So walk a mile in their shoes. Challenge orthodoxies, and it's a fun process, so have fun during that ideation. Test assumptions to be able to narrow down on a couple of ideas that are viable for the business to implement and for your customer to apply. Build prototypes, test them often, measure and iterate as many times as possible until you're confident that this is really designed and built for your end user. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope that gave you a little bit of a glimpse into design thinking and you're ready to take it back to your organizations. I'm ready for questions. Thank you. Do we have a mic? I think they're just getting the mic.
So thanks so much, Kasia. That was a wonderful session. I hope the next time we go to KPTH, I hope we don't have to go there for wrong reasons. But if you're going to learn design thinking, we probably see the roof and many other things.
Look at the ceiling.
Thank you, Kasia.
I think there's a question.
Question here? Patrick?
Yeah. Hello, Kasia. My name is Roma from Indonesia. I'd like to ask you, because you mentioned about empathy.
Yes.
Beginning. So my question is, when we conduct the empathy interview, right, is it okay to use our own experience to interpret and understand others' experiences?
So you usually want to focus only on the end user, because when you start applying your own filters into, I think the process works like this, you already start thinking about the opportunities and the ideas, and the case is to just focus fully on the end user. And you can actually also be, if you go through the process, you can be one of the object of the study. But I would say try to take away all your beliefs about how things work and just try to understand and observe and look at the non-verbal cues of the person you're interviewing, because their experience might be totally different. Thank you.
Time for probably a couple more questions. I see 2 hands there. So 1, 2, 3. Is that okay?
Yeah. Hi, Kasia.
Hi.
It's Sofyan from Indonesia. So, question number 1. Where have you seen successful design thinking from programs that are pre-existing? Like, for example, SAP or SuccessFactors implementation. Because basically the templates and everything are like predefined. And then how do you implement design thinking into implementation of such predefined programs? 1. Number 2, where have you seen HR transforming itself successfully when it comes down to designing programs? Because we have been quite famous from HR, by HR, for HR. So we don't put the product management sort of philosophy where user sits at the forefront. Thank you.
Thanks. So the first question was about seeing it as part of implementation of an HR system. Okay, frankly, I haven't seen, my domain is mainly in financial services. I haven't seen it working in human resources as part of an implementation. But I would say that you can try to implement it as early as possible to really, I can give you an example of core banking. That was an interesting discussion. So I was working on there was a core banking implementation planned in my previous employer, for a bank in Indonesia. And the bank had a number of functionalities that they thought they're implementing. And we said, okay, how about we take a step back and just start thinking about your customers? How will they use your new services? And we ran a number of engagements with the customers, with the bank employees, to really design on how the experience should look like. And then we went back to the drawing board and said, actually, these functionalities don't really make much sense. These we need to test again and see with the end user if they want it. So that influenced the implementation of the core banking platform, which drives everything afterwards. So I would say try to jump in as soon as possible and just ask questions, like what problem is this solving for our customers? What customer journey or employee journey? Whenever I said customer, just replace it with the employee. It's as simple as that, because employee or your internal customers in your organization. Well, if you realize that you don't really need certain functionalities, why have them? You might, so there are a couple of things, right? There's your strategy. There are things you might foresee you might need in the future. But if you don't see your internal customer needing it, then you might spend more time on building things that they really, that are important, like recruitment, for example, like the recruitment journey.
Hi, Kasia. Karen Gilchrist from CNBC. You've spoken about the kind of use of design thinking for the creation of tangible products, but beyond that, are there aspects of the process that can be applied to other parts of a career, perhaps other processes for doing your job function?
So actually, it doesn't have to be products. It can be service or internal process. So even in my current role at UBS, we apply design thinking a lot in helping our client advisors work better with their clients. And it's not really designing a product, it's designing a better experience or an easier experience for the client advisors to be able to provide this to the customer. So I would say you can apply it anywhere, as long as there is a user, the recipient, and there always is a recipient of someone who uses your system or someone who goes through the process. There's always opportunity to apply design thinking.